Welcome to another edition of Throwing Down Some Heavy Light. My name is Jamal Bindon. I'm the chair of the board of Movement Omaha for Race Equity. And we're an organization that deals with anti-racism and race equity issues in our community. Some of that focuses primarily on Omaha, but we're also looking at some issues that may affect other folks in our state. We've been around for over 10 years. And again, one of the things we're focused on is how we can reduce the level of white supremacy in many of our institutions, as well as the racism that is practiced very rampantly in many of our government and local nonprofits and so on. So today on the show, we have with us a special guest, one of our board members. This is not his first experience on Throwing Down Some Heavy Light, Alex Johnson, who is a board member of MORE. He also is a parent of students in the Omaha Plantation Schools. He recently had to deal with some conflicts in the community and deal with the Omaha Public Schools dealing with his child. Over when Alex was able to share with us some of the hoops and misconducts that he encountered, as well as he reminded us of some of the things that many of us experience in this trauma dealing with the school system. I experienced it, my children experienced, and again, some of the stuff that he experienced reflects some of the negativity of white supremacy personalities who are embedded in the government indoctrination camps in the school system. Again, welcome to Throwing Down Some Heavy Light. Alex Johnson, share a little bit more about yourself with the viewing audience, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamal. Happy to be here with everyone, and good evening. So, yes, my name is Alex Johnson. I'm a very proud board member here with MORE. My work is with Bannister's Leadership Academy, youth development nonprofit in the Omaha, founded in the Omaha area. We're actually statewide presence in 15 counties and counting. Married with children, 4 total, 2 boys, 2 girls, and basically what we're throwing down light on tonight is a situation that occurred with my youngest son, who was a freshman in high school, currently at South, formerly of Buena Vista. So just a quick note about myself, just who I am and what I'm about, just in growing up in North Omaha and going to Omaha Public Schools myself, being a student, and just being a man of color in the North Omaha area, just various as Ajamal alluded to, institutions and idiosyncratic implementations from these systems that are supposed to serve and protect us, such as OPS. So it's just high in time for us to just go ahead and start kind of kicking down doors and knocking on them first and then kicking them down, because what happened with me, I'm sure happens to parents throughout the school year, throughout the summer, and throughout the time that their children attend OPS. So it's definitely time that we start throwing down heavy light on it. So very happy to be here to share my story here.
Alex, you shared with me the letters related to some of the incidents or some of the encounters with the school functionaries, and particularly some of those administrators. And it also, I know some of those letters, they contained a lot of legal double talk. Some of the stuff I didn't quite understand how they were very redundant. And it also illustrates many professionals in that system don't know how to communicate with parents. Again, the way it was written is like they were trying to confuse you just from reading the letter. Describe the incidents that led to your school officials recommending your child expulsion a whole semester. I do know that Leo Lewis and they worked on that for a number of years to get laws passed so that some of those school administrators don't expel elementary kids and all that out of school instead of dealing with the issue. But tell us a little bit what happened at your situation with your child.
Certainly. So the incident at hand, it was in December of 2023. So it was at the end of the first semester of the current school year. My son was engaged, participating in like an after school intramural basketball type session, which is very familiar, very commonplace in the OPS. So he was, shooting his hoops, had his backpack and his jacket in the bleachers. The activity had ceased. He came to find that his phone was missing. So he asked the students that were present, had anyone seen it? Everybody said no, they didn't see anyone take it. They haven't seen it, so on and so forth. He went to the office. He asked the school personnel that was there at the time to review the camera footage to determine what had happened to the phone. They did so. It was determined that a student that was in the gym when my son made the inquiry had in fact taken the phone. At that time, the student had, by that point, vacated the premises. He was no longer at the school. They reached out. They made contact with the student and his parent. He was called back to the school. The phone was returned to my son. And at that point, that's when the OPS kind of bureaucracy, legalese, as it were, hiding behind the code of conduct, but not being accountable when they're incorrect about it, kind of took heed or took precedence. Basically, from that point, they did not discipline the student, right? So the very next day, he was in school, in class, like a normal day, early in the morning. I think it was about 9:15 in the morning. So I guess that'd be like second period. And my son basically saw him in the hallway, and he confronted the young man, and he assaulted him, as OPS says, but he he physically confronted the young man, right? So he did do that, and I never disputed that with OPS, and I never said that he didn't do that. My quip or qualm or discrepancy with them was that the policy for theft of an item over a certain dollar amount was not followed. So in essence, that's the framework, that's the groundwork. Somebody stole my son's phone, he got the phone back. As far as we could tell, they didn't really discipline the student, so he was present and available the next day. And yes, my son,
So Alice, let me play the devil's advocate. So your son hit the other person. Wouldn't your son be normally disciplined for hitting another person in that situation, even though the OPS didn't do anything about the stealing of your son's phone?
that's correct. He was subjected to an assault with bodily harm and a disruption of classroom activity. I believe was the official OPS allegation. I definitely don't want to call it a charge. That was the offense that my son was leveled with, was a assault with bodily injury and disruption of classroom, what have you.
So at some point, you said it got resolved to a point. I saw a series of letters and it looked like you had some closure. What was the final analysis of this situation, this incident that happened with your son? And you be
So
obviously being involved as a parent.
certainly. So what initially happened was they recommended that he be expelled for the remainder of the semester, which at that point was a week and a half because it was December of 2023. So it was literally, I believe, like 9 school days before the winter break. So they recommended he be expelled for a semester, but because it was so close to the end of the first semester, he was to be reassigned to an alternative school for the second semester. He could not return to a normal OPS school in the second semester, and then he would have to go to a different OPS school, not Buena Vista, in the fall of 24 for the 24-25 school year. That is what the initial
Recommendation was.
precedent. That's what the ruling was initially from OPS.
So how did you get it reversed, or did you get it reversed?
We did get it reversed. So what we had to do, and this is very important information that whether you're watching it live or you catch it on the Facebook, you definitely want to take note of this because these are the things that they don't necessarily tell you or make readily available or encourage you to do. And in fact, they try to discourage myself and my wife from following through. So the process that you want to follow through with when this situation happens is you want to request a due process hearing because much like the feigned justice system that we have in the United States, you have the right to a fair trial, so on and so forth. So you have the right to due process. So we requested that hearing. While that was occurring, while we, in the process of us requesting that hearing being set, my wife and I separately were contacted multiple times by multiple OPS personnel, in essence, Ajamal, trying to dissuade us from proceeding. They made statements such as, nobody has ever won a due process hearing.
Are you
I've worked with
serious?
OPS.
Are you serious? You saying these so-called professionals, called you up and tried to persuade you not to be an advocate for your child?
Absolutely. There was, and it's important to note that like these individuals were not at all involved in the process at the onset or ultimately the conclusion. It was almost like cannon fodder. It was almost like, you haven't talked to Mr. Johnson. Today's your day to get put in the meat grinder. You call him up.
So in other words,
And
you had multiple functionaries calling you up at different times.
absolutely. So initially when these types of situations occur, there is an office within the TAC building, Teacher Administrative Center, which is ultimately your administrative branch of OPS, the bosses, if you will. So it's the Family and Community Advocacy Center, office, department, whatever. So initially we were referred to them. I had an individual, he didn't return phone calls. He said he did.
Well,
We actually,
we would have proof of that with looking at our cell phones by knowing if they did or did not.
absolutely correct, because what ultimately happened, Jamal, is we pulled our call logs, both my wife and myself, we pulled our call logs from our cell phone provider because I'll try to get to that and expedite it and be as brief as I can. But ultimately, it got to where We won the due process hearing. We were still contesting it because they still were trying to reassign my son to an alternative school. They brought two lawyers in, not just the OPS legal, who's always there for OPS. They brought in a separately retained street lawyer based on my interactions with them. And it did lead to the fact that, yes, we had our call logs pulled and we were able to or ready to provide information that we were not contacted about this, that, and the
In
third.
other
But to
words,
try
they just lied like they usually do. Okay, I got you. By the way, some people don't know when they brought the lawyers in. You mean they're from an outside law firm, but not the people who work for OPS, like a private
correct.
law
So
firm? Do you know the
correct.
name
So
of
what
that law firm? Do you know the name
that
of them? The name.
I have it. It should be in that digital. Actually, it may not be in the digital transcript. I actually, honestly, I have it on paper. I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
But
got
yes,
you.
there's your standard OPS legal, like they're the lawyer for Omaha Public Schools. But and again, I don't know how many other times this has happened, but according to them, we set a precedent historically. They retained a separate legal counsel, a street lawyer, if you will, just to say street as in this individual was not formally, previously, or ultimately officially affiliated with OPS. So they had two lawyers and 16 staff members that wrote a statement against my son for this incident.
Wait. Hold on. I got to make sense of this because I had a similar incident years ago where a student told me a parent had to go through a hearing. They had like 6 or 7 staff members sitting in the hearing, and it was a single mom with her little kid, and she was a practicum student, so she was with, I guess, a social worker who was in the room, and she said, "Aljamal, it was horrific. It was negative. It was browbeating. It was bullying. It was like all of them ganged up on this single mom who." Again, who was trying to protect her kid, and she said I couldn't do much about it because I was just a student. So let's go back to your story, Ben. So when you're sitting
Sure.
with these people, what happened? How many were in the room at the time with you and your wife and your child?
So yes, we had to request a due process hearing. That ultimately took a month. During that time, because we requested a hearing within 5 business days of the expulsion, the school was supposed to retain Alex Jr. as a student and continue to provide him with his assignments, so on and so forth,
Right.
so that he could continue to be a student. They didn't do that. So 30 days went by. He didn't have his assignments. He was falling behind, et cetera, et cetera. So we're waiting for OPS to schedule the hearing, right? Because
And
they're
they're
telling us,
taking their time, in other words.
of course, because they need this, they need that. They have to gather their evidence. They have to present the evidence. They have to review our evidence, very much like a legal trial.
Of
And
course,
keep in mind, this is Omaha Public Schools, where I've been a tax-paying contributor since 1997, and I'm only 40 years old, right? It's important to note that. So I pay into OPS just like everybody else who pays taxes in Douglas County. And yeah, so it took a month. We got to the due process hearing. We have multiple individuals calling us. Their catch-all tagline was, "We just want to make sure that you understand what the hearing's going to be
so
about."
they come with a parent. Alice, I got 5 other questions I want to get you before we open it up. So let me switch up if I can, because I'm trying to track through some other questions. Uh, One of the things I want to say to you, I was surprised by the documentation of your student and family get a copy of. They said your kid got a copy of the school conduct record or so on. Why did they devote so much time documenting that correspondence? In other words, don't all students get that conduct? In other words, the way they say it is, since you had this conduct code that they give out to all the students, you should know what the rules are and you should play by the rules.
Everyone is provided a copy. However, the school themselves chooses if and when to enforce that. And as I had alluded to previously, like before this session, I already have a part two cooking with my other son at the same high school. So in essence, OPS chooses what students, what situations, and what degree or depth that they're going to apply the code of conduct. So that's basically what happened is I gave them a taste of their own medicine. I threw it back in their face and I said, well, your code of conduct says this, that, and the third. Why was that policy not adhered to? Oh, well, it says up to. So we don't have to go up to. And I said, okay, well, you maxed my son out, which is, that's prison talk, right? You maxed my son out on the first offense, which was the first time he got in a fight. You maxed him out on the penalty, but yet this young man who was guilty of theft was not maxed out. So, like, why were the punishments not, why were they not matched up or paralleled, right?
Now let me switch up a little bit. Now I'm throw this out. We have not talked about race here of the perpetrator being your son in this case, and the victim being the guy who your son hit, and the school hearing officers. Were there any people of color involved in this, or this between you and your son? Are you both students of color? Or was one white and one black? Talk to me about
No, for
the
this
conversation.
instance, the school is Buena Vista, which is 60th and L. So it is primarily comprised of Hispanic students. My son is, I mean, I guess he's mixed, but as far as all his documentation is, he's Native American. So as a Native American student against a Hispanic student, the school is probably, I mean, if you want to do like a 60-40, maybe even an 80-20, there are black students, there are white students, just like anything else in any major metropolitan area. There's a small cadre, if you will, of Native American students, Asians, etc. But it's primarily Hispanic with, I guess you would say, equal dispositions of black and white students at that particular school. For the hearing, it was, I was surprised to note that the hearing officer was a black woman. So not only was she a minority, she was a female as well.
Okay,
And I will also deem that it's important to note that had it not been a black woman, I do not believe that we would have got the outcome that we did ultimately.
gotcha. Switching up again, do the OPS have video evidence of the fight, and why are you contesting if they did have that video? In other words, you never challenged that part of it, right? Or what?
That's correct. They did have video evidence of the phone being stolen, that whole instance of my son going to the office. So when the incident happened, and then of course that I know of, I don't know that there was video evidence of the fight officially. There were students that videotaped it. Like we came into possession of a student view, a POV, if you will, of
Gotcha.
the fight. OPS had official cameras of the day before. We did not contest it because, again, my whole bone to pick was not that my son meted out his own system of justice. It was that OPS, had they followed their own code of conduct or matched up the penalties and the punishments, my son wouldn't have even had an opportunity to do that because the young man would have been suspended for
Yeah.
stealing.
Now, the teacher administrator made a statement back in the day, and the district oftentimes took their word. So, in other words, I remember in a case with my kid where the administrator was able to do something, even though the officer who saw the whole thing disagreed with the administrator, but they still followed the administrator's role. In your correspondence, they used the word, instead of notarized affidavit of the staff, they use those terms, notarized affidavit of the staff, meaning they notarized their statements. Is that common practice in OPS? In other words, back in the day when we were in school, they just talked to each other. You got a document where they had to notarize each and every statement from each administrator or person. I'm a little surprised with that in a school setting.
It's my express belief that and I'm using commonplace jargon here. I just think I had him running scared
So they notarized
because
every statement they made, basically made each administrator almost say, I will swear by that this is my true statement.
almost up to the point of like a criminal,
Right.
or
School to
civil or
prison pipeline
civil
stuff. Right.
or
They're
civil
preparing us for
litigation.
going to Lincoln and being in the state pen. Now, one of the things you challenge, one of the statements you challenge, one of the statements where the student, which the official, you said the student didn't speak good English or had a challenge with English. And then you said the way it was written up, what the student said, the student had you said flowery descriptive vernacular. Like the student just all of a sudden became Einstein and started using big words and stuff where the student was talking from a student angle. You mean they didn't have enough brain power to avoid that impropriety or that sense of stupidity to doctor up a student's language? Students don't say certain words right at certain ages.
As much as we get an opportunity to, I want to like definitely throw down heavy light on the very basic ignorance of OPS as it were. So yes, on one accord, because they wanted to drum up this eyewitness as someone that was so traumatized. They're from a different country and they've never seen anything like this, and so on and so forth. And they required a translator, but they were just so emotionally affected that they just had to let their story be known. But yet the vernacular was such that it was almost like a college graduate. Like I myself fancy myself as a wordsmith, and it was almost on par with something that I said. I'm pretty sure it was an AI generated statement, just to be totally honest. And
I'm
obviously
trying not
there's a
to
little bit
laugh,
of
but
humor in it. It is funny because they really think that. So real quickly, this is what I told them throughout this process. I told them that English is not my second language, right? I told them that I did go to college just like them, right? And I also told them that like this is not my first rodeo. I was instrumental in passing a measure so that Native American students could have beadwork on their graduation caps because believe it or not, clear up until the 2010s in OPS, you cannot have beadwork. You could have a feather on your graduation cap, but you couldn't have your auntie or your grandmother or your mother bead your graduation cap because it was deemed excessive. So I had to write a measure against OPS to basically say, you're being racist, you're being prejudicial, you're being discriminatory. That passed. And then I have a real quick situation that I won't even delve into where my oldest son in elementary school was asked by an OPS security guard, was the reason that he did not salute or pledge of allegiance because he was a Muslim. So I'm no stranger to OPS and their improprieties and their ineptitude and their inefficiencies. And it's high time that the community at large becomes aware of it, because they really need to reform, reshape, remodify, or let's talk defunding, right? That's
right.
gonna be a conversation.
Now, again, as to avoid getting the weeds, at the end, you said the school district did decide in your favor.
Correct. So ultimately, we won the due process hearing. The hearing officer, based on the evidence and so on and so forth in the hearing, had dictated that, recommended that my son should not have been expelled based on the offense. However, the OPS loophole was that due to the violent nature of the offense, he still could not be in the same school. So my response to that was, if the young man can steal, but cannot fight and cannot speak English, I'm not sure where that is Alex Johnson Jr.'s fault. I'm not really sure where that's his fault. However, we will take that. But the thing that's, again, important to note as we stay on topic here is they still wanted to reassign him to an alternative school. So that was the second leg of the battle, because they said, okay, he's not expelled, but he still has to go to Blackburn and he can't come back to Buena Vista. So we said, well, pump the brakes there, Turbo. If he shouldn't have been expelled, then he's not going to go to an alternative school. I myself went to an alternative school in high school. My son, as they say, is not, he's garage kept and spoon fed. He is not of the caliber or the cloth, if you will, of most individuals that find themselves in alternative school situations. And I'm speaking from experience. He's better than that. And I wouldn't allow them to relegate him to that status.
Yeah.
So the battle did continue.
We're tracking time a little bit. What advice would you have for parents in dealing with similar incidents to yours? What advice would you give? Because I'm sure this happens to a lot of our parents in the community. And again, they don't have access to legal teams, public funds, the kind of money that OPS wastes constantly in our community fighting against some of the things that we have needs.
I don't have, I don't have anything. I'm not a lawyer. I went to college, I'm not degreed. I didn't finish, right? I went. So what's my advice? You have, first of all,
yeah.
For parents, the first thing that I can recommend is any interaction that you have with OPS, you must record it. As I said, I'm currently in another battle separate from this. That's going to be part 2 of this Throwing Down Heavy Light. You must record all interactions. I want everyone to know that may see this now or in the future. Nebraska is one of 38 states that is a single consent state. So you are the single consent. So as long as it's not for torture or criminal, you don't need anyone's permission to record them. Now, in a physical setting, that may be different. My advice, record everything. Do not take no for an answer. Continue to elevate and escalate. So if you talk to this person and you don't like what they're saying, ask for their boss, ask for their boss, ask for their boss, all the way up to the board. Because ultimately what happened with us, our board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. A Monday afternoon. Friday morning, we got a call yet again from some woman that we don't know. What do you really want? What is it that you're looking for? And we said, all we want is for him to just go to a different regular high school. That's all we want. 30 minutes later, even amongst this whole turmoil of Matthew Ray being the new superintendent, that was literally the same week, Ajamal, amongst all this turmoil, within 30 minutes, we got a call back and they said, your son has been assigned to South. He starts Monday.
I'm disappointed that Matthew Ray got appointed, because I know that he's been there for 27 years. I never heard him do anything significant related to race issues. I've been writing for years.
He gets 2 thumbs down. He's terrible.
Scott Smith's born. I've asked him for data on comparing African Americans and students of colors over the years. They have not got anything. They don't return phone calls. And some of them clowns don't understand why some of these parents don't want their kids to go to OPS. And many of these administrators and folks, they don't send their kids to OPS. So who are they to blame if we want to get out of that hornet's nest? Again, this is a school that intentionally segregated people for many years. Students never apologized, never cleaned it up, and they still run an apartheid system. The other thing, before we switch to the participants and who are watching and so on, um, do you think you're going to get any pushback or repercussions where they're going to put you like on the Douglas County watch list? There's a group of white supremacists in the police department and also in Douglas County who tend to have the school pipeline, prison pipeline thing working very few. Well for our community, but do you think you're gonna get some repercussions to you for doing what you're doing and going public about this?
Well, let me say this as I have this T-shirt on for the brother minister who's resting in eternity. I hope they do because they're just going to save me from having to talk over these same things over and over and over again. So I hope that they are taking notes and I hope that they are taking pictures and I hope that they do remember this face and remember this voice because at the end of the day, this is the thing. I got a 4-year-old daughter. I got 10 or 12 more years of this with OPS. I got a son that's just a freshman. I got a son that's a junior. So the pushback, I mean, do I anticipate it? Of course I do. This is a bureaucratic institution and entity. And as I alluded to at the beginning, which I deliberately did not really speak to, I work in a nonprofit sector where we are in and out of OPS. So I would firmly anticipate that, you know, in their in their haste to try to save face, that they'll do like they've done already and act prematurely and launch preeminent strikes, which ultimately will fall flat and the accountability will fall on them. So everything that they do, ultimately, they will have to pay some sort of price on the level of accountability because all I am is a tax-paying citizen and a concerned parent. I'm not
Yeah.
an entity. I don't have one lawyer, let alone two. I don't have 16 people with sworn statements against them, so on and so forth. It's just a one-man army, and that's all it really needs, right? I mean, it's a butterfly effect. So yeah, the pushback will come. I hope that it comes because, like I said, I'll do these types of implementations as many times as it takes. But at the end of the day, much like anyone else, as you like to quote, I can't debate anyone beneath me. I can only educate you. I can only debate my equals, right? So I don't want to keep having to go over the basics and the perfunctory information with the peons and the peasants. You need to understand who I am and where I'm coming from, and that you probably do need a lawyer before you take that phone call or respond to the email. If not, you might find yourself in some pretty tepid hot water.
Thank you. You know, before we switch to the audience, I want to say years ago, I used to attend the Functionary 360 meetings, and it came up in meetings that for years, the SROs were referring a lot of the kids to the police department, the legal department, all that being put in the school to prison pipeline. After they did some training, I guess they went to Georgetown, they were able to educate many of the SROs not to refer some of these kids into the criminal justice or juvenile justice system. And when they asked for the numbers, and I think it was Greg Gonzalez at the point was I talked to him and some other folks who were in key positions. They told me the numbers declined by 50% by the training they got to learn how to deal with students and de-escalate conflicts so they were not making those kids criminals inside the system. When I use the word criminals, I mean juvenile justice criminal types, where they put them to DMC and so on like that. So I know that if you got good administrators and you got good police officers who work in the schools, and basically I don't think we need police officers in schools. They should get out on the streets and do their work. But again, now that we pay them a lot of money with our public funds, we need to be able to scrutinize what are they doing and how many of our kids are ending up in that school to prison pipeline, which they don't necessarily have any data to show you that. They don't even have data to show you about the comparison of different racial groups. At least they don't make it public. So again, these are the questions we need to be asking ourselves about the quality of our education long term. Look at UNO, oftentimes you don't see our graduation levels reflecting that quality high school education. So I'm gonna stop there, Alex, and throw it open to the public because we are right at halfway through the show, and the way we do this, we let people to comment or raise their own questions or anything to you as the guest. So we're gonna throw it open, and I'm gonna play the role of the moderator and keep my mouth shut for a little bit.
Awesome. Sounds good.
I say it has her hands up. Go for it.
Hello, and Ajamal, there is no way you're going to sit there and keep your mouth shut. Don't lie.
Wait. Show me some love now. This is going across the international community. All my relatives across the world are listening to this. So go ahead,
I
Sid.
only say it because I love you. Alex, hey, I just want to say I'm just so proud of you, I guess is the word that I would use, for not quitting, because in this situation, as well as any other, when you're dealing with power, they just try to outlast you. They just beat you down and beat you down. And most of the time they are successful. That's why they do it, because it works. So anyway, I applaud you for hanging in there for your kids. And As far as the high schools are concerned, as a substitute teacher, I've been in several of them. And I've been in the ones that you mentioned today. And there's one I wouldn't go back to. And it's not in South Omaha. So it's because at the top down, I don't believe, and this is my personal opinion, that accountability is a real thing there. They gloss over as much as they can, and then they wonder why the kids blow up. I've been there maybe 5 times, and there were police activities going on 2 of those times.
Wow.
So, and to me, I have a high school that I love, that I go to most of the time, and there people are treated with respect, whether they're students, parents, subs, or regular teachers.
Let me interrupt you. When we throw out these names, these places, if they're good, why don't we mention their name? Is it a good school, or can we do that?
Benson is an awesome school.
Okay, good. Okay.
Incredible administration.
Okay.
Extremely supportive of everyone, trying to find what you need to succeed all the time.
Good. Okay, we got other people coming in, want to ask questions, comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are other folks here?
Hey, Azamal, it's Suzanne. I ain't gonna be quiet. So I'll just a comment and then maybe a question. So, Alex, I've got 3 in OPS. A son who is a senior, a foster kid who is a senior, and then a daughter who is a sophomore. But going back to all the way back to elementary, when my son was in elementary school, he's white. He was in a fight. He tackled the kid who had been picking on him and teasing him. The school said they had video of it. I get a call. My son's in like 3rd grade, that my son's getting suspended for 3 days at home suspension. But I'm not allowed to see the video of it.
That's against the law.
So started way back then. Fast forward, we went through Morton. That was actually pretty decent. They are at Northwest now, but back to elementary. My son, the same one, in 5th grade, decided that he was not going to stand and recite the pledge in the morning. He had come to me and asked me about it and said, "Do I have to?" And I said, "Absolutely not." I knew it was not out of disrespect of our military, because we have many family friends that are in the military. It was him taking a stand at that point in his life for Black Lives Matter. He sat, and within a couple of days came home and said, "I got in trouble for not standing." And I said, "Oh, no, that's not going to happen." Contacted the school. They told me I had to put in writing that I was approving my son not to stand during the pledge.
Oh, wait, hold it. They asked you to put it in writing? OPS did
That's
that?
not, that's not what happens. I just quickly have to jump in.
No, hold on. She said they asked her. She had to put it in writing.
Correct. Correct. That's not correct. That's basically illegal. They can't ask her to do that. Real quickly, just about this whole misconception about not pledging allegiance means something about the military. So my grandfather fought in World War II. My father fought in Korea. My oldest brother fought in Desert Storm 1. I'm from a military family. I'm the first generation that, and as far as like me, did not actively serve. Pledging allegiance to the flag has nothing to do with the military. If you know your history, the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, they have their own flag, right? They have their own flags for every branch of the military. The flag of America represents something that, for those who know and who take the time to do the research, the red, white, and blue means something totally different to those who know. So I just always want to take 45 seconds to say that. It has nothing to do with anything military based, because our country, unless you're one of those people, is much more than a military force. So if you don't pledge of allegiance, you're saying much more and actually very little to the military, as opposed to the greater machine, as it were. But that's all I wanted to say. Please
No,
continue.
100% with you. And the only reason I said that was because at the time, that was he had a teacher and a librarian confronting him, saying, how dare you disrespect our country's military? Literally confronting him and saying, how dare you disrespect our military? So I did send a letter, and then I called the principal and I demanded an in-person meeting. Obviously they had no choice. I was like, I can call my attorney or he gets to sit. Like you have two options here. There is nothing on the table here. But it affected, I'll just say it affected the rest of his school year, right? Those just like you said, those teachers that didn't like it had it out for him.
Of course.
The other thing I just want to comment on is you mentioning the code of conduct, and each school gets to enforce it at their own will. I would agree with that statement. I literally just, the reason I was late joining this tonight is because I was at an OPS meeting. I was asked to be one of very few parents to participate in a meeting, and it was primarily about OPS athletics. But as part of that meeting, we were asking questions about what is the difference? Why does one school allow Fs and the next school doesn't allow Fs?
That's part two of this throwing down heavy light.
Why does one school offer varsity letters to any kid who shows up, and the other schools you don't? We don't care what the damn rule is, but why can you not have any consistency? And they basically told us it was by school. So I absolutely believe that school, that conduct book is BS, and each school gets to basically put into play what they want. That's it.
Yeah, it's very piecemeal. And like I said, my whole thing, just quickly to touch on that, because you were just at a meeting, that's basically the second half of my fight. My oldest son, not the son who was a victim of this impropriety, but my oldest son, he's an athlete. He was defensive player of the year for Buena Vista for football. He was a co-captain on the wrestling team, and he's a standout track and field star. Because of that, I kind of just allow him some leeway, and I don't really try to be in his business a lot. Long story short, went to conferences, found out he had been failing in class for the whole third quarter. Guess what starts in the third quarter? Track and field. So he had been going to meets. There was actually a situation where I called the school and told them, take him off the bus. He cannot compete in the track meet. He has his own vehicle. He skipped school, went to the track meet. This was 3 weeks ago. It'd be a month ago Friday, and I'm still trying to get them. Listen to me, as the parent and everything that you've heard about me for the last 38 minutes, I'm trying to get them to discipline my son, and the principal is ghosting and screening my calls because she knows I'm going to record everything. So just a note about what you're saying. That's going to be part two. So we'll see you again, Suzanne.
So true story. My same thing happened here with my foster in football. He was failing. I said, no, you how can you play? You're failing. Nope, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's and I talked to the athletic director at the school, and in a recorded phone call, he lied to me. He told me that the rule has been changed for the 23-24 school year, and I quote, they just have to go to academic counseling. If they go to academic counseling, then they can still compete. What the code of conduct for 23-24 says, and I quote, that if failing, they cannot compete and they must attend academic counseling until they have a grade. So he literally just blew smoke and lied to me, and it's in a recorded phone call. So
I was told
the
same exact thing. I was told the same exact thing tonight, but one better. I was told they only have to attend 1 hour of academic tutoring. If you have an F, for every F, you go an hour and you can play.
Well, the question, Suzanne, and obviously if someone else has a question, I want to keep it open. But the question to that is, we're at the end of April. Where was that addendum or modification to the code of conduct? Because according to NSAA, Nebraska School Athletics Association, and OPS, the code of conduct does not say that they just have to go to this council. It doesn't say that. So don't tell me that we're 3.5 quarters through the school year and somebody forgot to update the code of conduct, because it doesn't say that here and now. I challenge anyone on this that's seeing this, go look up our code of conduct and show me what it says for students that are failing. It says they cannot compete.
Wow.
Yep. So they're still lying to us all, even here and now, as you just came from a meeting.
So for the parents who are trying to hold their kids accountable and trying to get them to do better,
You're the bad
school
guy.
actually overrules us. Yeah.
You're the bad guy. Your kid, just like my son, you're going to be the villain because the school says it's okay. But here's the thing, like Ajamal loves to say, Omaha Plantation, prison to pipeline, run, N-word, run. They don't care about my son for the next 40, 50, 60 years like I'm tasked with the challenge. They only care about him for the next 1.5 seasons. After that, they don't care what happens to my son. So if he doesn't pass his classes and he doesn't have the GPA to get a partial academic scholarship, that's of no business of theirs. That's going to fall on me. So that's where the challenge comes in, because they don't care about your child. They care about what they can do to perform athletically. And that's period, point blank.
Wow.
Well,
So
I think at some schools, it even comes down to they just care about graduating them.
well, you know, I haven't even questioned the graduation rate because I've gone to school with people back in the day who couldn't read and write. So when they use the word how many graduates are functionally literate and so on. And again, they just had a conference here in Omaha about Black literacy rate. And so when you look at book clubs, libraries, you look at the academic institutions, a lot of them offer remedial courses because our elementary and secondary schools do not provide good reading techniques. I have a colleague of mine said they're using some wrong reading modality for kids. And so again, many people will speak about the OPS or the Omaha Plantation Schools and they're not making these corrections. Other feedback, other reactions. Sid, I'm going to keep quiet. I see Karen, you have your hand up. Karen.
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Yeah, so
What do you call that? Don't turn that up.
I think that OPS has just a huge problem. I think the school
Uh-oh, somebody's voice is there. Somebody here. Can we mute that?
Okay, I muted them.
Okay.
When my daughter was a sophomore, she was having some issues around truancy, and the administration called me in for a meeting where they said they were going to have all 9 of her teachers and 2 or 3 administrators there, and in the end there was only 1 teacher and 1 administrator who showed up for the meeting to talk to me about the options that we had. And in the end, they said that afternoon that they couldn't really do anything if she wasn't in the school building. And then, so I went home without any options. The next day, the dean of the school called to say, well, you know, there is one thing, we've got this program with the juvenile detention center. You know, we could put an anklet on her. And then her truancy would demonstrate that she needs to go to the juvenile detention center. So I heard those words and I immediately withdrew her from OPS. And
good for you, Karen. Good for you.
I mean, you know, I had the advantage of being a stay-at-home mom at the time, so I had that option, but a lot of people don't have that. And so anyway, I think there's some major problems if that's the kind of program that the only option that they've got available is sending somebody to juvie.
And that's the thing. That's part of the problem. Is it's a twofold thing. On one hand, you have these referrals are a networking bonus. So ultimately, in some way, shape, or form, OPS is going to benefit from these SRO referrals, these dean of students referrals, so on and so forth. Right. The other end of the spectrum, or the other, I guess, devil's hand, if you will, in this whole debacle is that when you classify a student, a person, an individual as such, that follows them. When you convict someone as a felon at 18 because they stole a car, that's going to affect them into their 30s when they're trying to finance a car. I mean, that's strategic. So with OPS, the bureaucracy and very much that's what it is. What they do is they prey upon the fact that your average OPS parent, because that's all they are. It's not a family. It's not a couple. So mom cannot go to TAC building at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Dad cannot be at the hearing on Wednesday at 12:30. They have to work. And only because me, capitalizing and realizing and overcoming adversity. Like I don't like to, well, I'm lying. I do like to pat myself on the back, but just being totally transparent and intentional only because of like much deliberance, like deliberately acting on this, were we able to make history. They told us when we went to these offices time and time again, no one has ever done this. No one has ever won. And then subsequently, you guys are the first ones. So OPS as a whole, to Suzanne, to you, to myself, they're banking and they're betting on the fact that they're just going to wear you down.
Well,
They're going
you
to
know, Alex, it's almost like the police department where they had 62 complaints last year and they didn't find on behalf of one. But Karen, I'm going to ask you a question. Did they try to negotiate with you when you were dealing with your child in the school system? Did they give you some alternatives like 1, 2, and 3? Did you get any of that from them, Karen?
No, there was no 1, 2, and 3. They basically, if she's not in the building, we can't do anything about it. And there's no option other than, eventually, I guess, I don't even know. They didn't give me any options at all. They said they had this one program, and other than that, there was no options. And I saw that as evil, and I didn't want my child to be part of that.
Very much so. And again, this tax grants for private schools and it's so terrible. That's the flip side of it. You watch the news, you're a person of color, or you're an oppressed person, or hey, you're just a caring parent like Karen Abram. You're just a caring parent, right? And you say, well, that's terrible that they're gonna give people breaks to send their kids to private school. No, you know what? That's what we have to deal with. So if we can be a stay-at-home mom, or we don't have the schedule flexibility to be at every hearing and take every phone call, what happens to our kids? I'll tell you guys something. In appearing with my work with the nonprofit, I was at a middle school and parish alternative school. This was an 8th grade social studies class in 2022. The worksheet said, and I quote, "Millions of Africans volunteered to come to America because they wanted to help and build the greatest nation in the world. It was known as voluntary servitude." That is what 2022 Omaha Public Schools does to describe the transatlantic slave trade. That's what they're teaching all of our youth all across the board in middle school social studies. So I digress. Do I really need to say anything else? Like, I could just literally be quiet for the next 12 minutes. It was the most incredulous thing. And only because I have a dedication and a commitment to my organization, to the mission, to the job that I serve, I didn't take the worksheet and screenshot and blast it because I was appearing in an official professional capacity. But I guarantee if anybody has an 8th grader and whatever their American history, they likely had a version of that worksheet even here and now.
You know what? That comes as no surprise. Cynthia Robinson, who was in history class at UNO, told me out of her mouth to my ears that one of her history professors said in front of all the students that it was better that Africans were enslaved and brought here because it basically helped civilize her. She got up and walked out of the class. I thought she dropped the class or reported it. To my knowledge, she didn't do any of that. And so my point is that same behavior continues because so-called Negroes and handkerchief head and bootlickers are letting that stuff go forward. And I remember when we was pushing that multicultural education back in 1983, Pat McKee and Art Hill and I was pushing it with a number of coalition of parents. And we, at one point, OPS had the audacity to say they're going to play some Native American music, and they want to play Cherokee People, Paul Revere the Raiders, as Native American music. Now, again, these are the same clowns that come through that teacher education indoctrination thing out of UNO. Again, you wonder why our kids and our community looks like it does, because of the things that should not be there. And we need oversight, not only of these departments at the university who teaches race and culture, but even our local school systems. Again, they'll let those Liberty moms come in and dictate things, but they won't let parents of color come in and scrutinize the curriculum that you just alluded to, Alex. So I'm embarrassed. I'm surprised that they actually let you see that. They should have grabbed all those sheets before you walked in the room because they probably know that somebody's going to see that stuff.
From now on, I assume that they will, because as I alluded to with your last question with the backlash, I really hope that this expose and definitely and hopefully a subsequent part 2 that we're going to get cranking on as soon as we wrap on this. I really hope that parents and people in the community, people in the school system, people that work there that know this is wrong, to be complacent is to be compliant, right? To stand silent is to stand, subjected and to stand judged, right? To paraphrase the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You can't say that you have to stand by silent, because I've been in an affliction and in a manifestation of my own self where I was of a certain criminal element, so on and so forth. Like, basically what I'm saying is, if you're in an opportunity professionally to do something, you have to do it, because there's thousands into millions of young men and women all across America, and there's thousands in the Douglas County area that are oppressed, and they do have those convictions, and they feel like they don't have a voice and nobody wants to hear them. I just happen to live long enough. So I just outlived some of my past, some of my history, so on and so forth, right? But everybody that's listening, like, when these situations happen with the school system, you have to go to the TAC building. You have to record everything. You have to request all the meetings. You have to keep asking questions. And you really, truly have to understand that, much like the everyman out here that doesn't believe that the government lies to us about UFOs, the OPS is going to lie to you about your child and about how they treat them from 7 to 4 Monday through Friday for 30 weeks out the year. I promise you, I have so much recorded and printed documentation where they have done nothing but tell out and out fallacies to me in my face, as far as I'm on the phone with the code of conduct in front of me, and you're telling me that the rule has changed, just like they told Suzanne. That's their catchphrase now. But Suzanne, if you've taken the time, and if you haven't now, please do so. Look up the 23-24 Code of Conduct. Go on the NSAA website. That is the Nebraska School Athletics Association. That is the depth that I've gone to research and examine and expose this. Nothing says that they can play when they're failing. Nothing says that. And if so, why does the Code of Conduct 3 3/3 into the school year not reflect such? So just back to the topic of the OPS and their oppression and their inefficiency and their ineptitude, they're going to lie to you. They're going to dissuade you. They're going to try to discredit you, and they will most certainly disappoint you.
It reminds me of years ago when they had the School of Conduct, they started putting it together. And at one point they had, if you brought scissors to school, you get kicked out of school automatically because they saw it as a weapon. And
I remember that.
I was I was going to a flight in DC, it was a Catholic Charities National Conference or workshop. And I saw the newspaper in the airport, read it, and saw that they kicked out a little elementary kid because she had blunted scissors. I wrote, at the time, John Langan, I think, was a president of the board. I wrote him a letter and says, you have to make exceptions, because if that little kid walked in with some toy scissors or small scissors at a blunted edge, you do not treat that as a weapon. Ultimately, they ended up reversing that decision where they didn't kick that young girl out. But I was so upset that they had the stupidity of leadership that they would come up with that. But again, when you got people who've been in the system for 27 years who've never busted a grape, you never seen them in the community, in the neighborhood, or engaging parents about some of the racism and elitism in that system, you wonder why our kids don't do well when they get to university, and so on and so on. But we have about a few minutes left, Alex, and I want to let you have a chance. Anybody last minute comments you want to talk about this this exciting topic of OPS and its plantation system, and obviously their collaboration with the county attorney's office with their school prison pipeline, the police department with their SROs, and all these folks who should be brought to court for their behaviors for treating their kids disrespectfully.
I'm going to take like 60 to 90 seconds, and hopefully somebody else has a question or a comment that you and I can respond to. So what I want to say, just real clear and concise, is I want everybody to understand that these are the harsh, stark realities of Douglas County, Nebraska. I want you to understand that if and when you find yourself as a parent, and again, we've already had testament and witness beyond myself. We've had, I didn't see Suzanne. I can only make assumptions, which I don't like to do. I know a little bit about Karen, so I can say that Karen is of a different ethnic and socioeconomic disposition as me, and she incurred the same lackluster, ineffective, inefficient ineptitude, right? Suzanne describes a similar situation. These are both women, right? I'm a man of color, and I'm describing something similar to you. I know that there are thousands of people that should be listening, watching, and taking note of this. We must, if you don't want to band together and you don't want to present a united front, all you have to do is email this type of information to more. We take pride, we take liberty, we take precedence, and we take action on these kind of things. That's what this evening and this last 55 minutes has been all about. So whoever is there and whoever may watch this, I'm very thankful and grateful for you to view this, and definitely use our contact information. Reach out to us. Eventually, we need you to donate to us, right? But ultimately, reach out to us and get in contact with us, because at the end of the day, the donation is going to come from the action. We'll act on and for whoever before we ever ask you to reach into your pocket. We're going to reach into our hearts, our souls. We do this thing on the regular. We do it on a weekly, daily, hourly, monthly basis. This is it's wrong. It's unfair. And for the amount of taxes and the amount of financial responsibility that they level on us as taxpaying citizens in Douglas County, they have to do better accountability wise. So that's really all I have to say, and I really appreciate anyone. So anything else for me or Ajamal, we'd love to hear it.
We got a minute or two. Anybody want to make any other comments?
Asma, I'll just say thank you. You know, I agree, Alex. I am fortunate enough to be, I am a single mom, but I'm fortunate enough to be in a career that takes care of my family well, and I have the ability to be up at that high school nonstop, if need be. And I know many families, at least at my high school, but across the district, don't have that ability. And so I do often take very much it personal that I am speaking on behalf of my kids and every other kid whose parents are working.
Yes, ma'am. No, we got to try to be there for them. I graduated from Northwest. Unfortunately, I've heard that in the 20 or so years since, it's kind of just like a lot of OPS schools. It's just not, the shining beacon that it once was. But we really have to be compelled, and we really have to feel dutiful when we are empowered to be able to just have time. I mean, how simple and how easy is that, just as human beings, that you and I sit here and Karen as well and say, well, we were just fortunate enough to have the time. You shouldn't have to fight for the time to make your school district that you pay taxes into do right by your son or daughter. That should be a prerequisite. Otherwise, why am I paying? Let me check the box that says no. That's ultimately what it boils down to. We don't get a choice to contribute, but they try to act like we have a choice when it's time to contribute to conversations and the impacts and the opportunities to make change. So we all have to do what we can. That's emailing, that's calling, that's texting, and that's participating in these think tanks and public forums. We have to do it. It's just an hour out of your day. We got 23 more, and we're going to sleep hopefully for 8 of them. So we got to do what we got to do. It's just so imperative. And I'm just going to make it my mission. I tell my mom on a every other day basis, I'm not going to stop because my daughter's just now going into kindergarten. So I will say this, and then I will ultimately, as Ajamal says, I'll be quiet. OPS is either going to finance my early retirement, or they're going to finance the futures of all of our collective sons and daughters, one or the other, because I will not stop until this accountability happens. It just has to go. And I don't have anything else better to do. The money's been made. We're doing our other more stuff. So it's me versus OPS and whoever else wants to tag along. Let's go.
Hey, Ajma, here's one that I would love to have OPS answer for us, is all of the administration at TAC and even across the schools that are, don't want to support allowing these vouchers for kids to go to private schools. How many of them send their kids to OPS?
Good question. Matter of fact, they need to be more disclosing and transparent.
Because I could name a handful, and I ain't going to call them out because some of them are my friends, but we've got plenty of high ups at TAC who want to continue serving OPS and continue telling us not to have these vouchers, and they send their own kids out to Westside and Millard and Elkhorn and everywhere.
That is just, like I said, nothing else.
We're getting we're at the end. We're gonna have to close because we want to stay close to our time. But I will end by saying I really appreciate y'all being on here. And also, I will end with an African proverb that says, beware of the cook that refuses to eat his or her food. So again, as we start to deal with these issues, let's go forward and hopefully we have an opportunity to maybe get a rebuttal or feedback from OPS. But with all those incompetent people, administrators who are overpaid, I can't believe the salaries they give that superintendent. It's a joke. But anyway, let me stop there and stop making editorial comments. Thank you all for being here. And so we always say, may the force be with you, and Barocco.
Thank you.